All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I want to say that it's a real honor to be standing here with activists from around the state and so many of my colleagues. I'm joined by Representative Colton, Representative Hovey Wright, and Representative Shirkey here to roll out the introduction of a marijuana decriminalization bill here in Michigan. This is a policy that 17 other states have adopted before us. This is a policy that's working well in many of our communities here in Michigan, where local initiatives have been well supported. And we're going to talk about both the practical reasons and the philosophical reasons why we need to end marijuana prohibition here in Michigan. So I'm here to announce the introduction of House Bill 4623, which would decriminalize simple possession of small amounts of marijuana in Michigan. It would mean that possession of marijuana up to and including an ounce would be punished with a civil infraction and a fine rather than treated as a crime with jail time and associated court costs and incarceration costs for our state and local governments. We're introducing this bill today because we know, and the people here in Michigan know, that marijuana prohibition is not working. Despite the fact that we're spending a minimum of $325 million a year on arresting, trying, and incarcerating marijuana users in the state, we know that marijuana has never been more available. We know that law enforcement has not been successful in keeping marijuana out of the hands of anyone in the state, and it's been especially ineffective in keeping marijuana out of the hands of children. And we all know from our experience in the 30s and our reading of the history books that alcohol prohibition also didn't work, and that when we adopted a more sane and, if I may, sober policy with respect to alcohol, we were better able to control it, we were better able to make sure that it was kept out of the hands of children, and we were better able to maintain public safety. But it's not just the practical reasons. It's not just that marijuana prohibition isn't working for our state and for our local governments and for our families here in Michigan. There's also a philosophical reason to decriminalize marijuana. And I'm going to let Representative Shirkey handle most of that at the end, but I just want to offer a little thought. You know, when we're in civics class as young people, we're taught that America is a free country. And I don't think that refers to how much the European settlers paid the natives for the land. I think that refers to freedom. And the principle upon which our country is founded and the principle upon which our country has been so successful with is that if individuals are making choices in their personal lifestyle, if they're engaging in activities that are a harm to no one but themselves, that should be allowed. So I'm here to say that marijuana prohibition is not working, it's un-American, and now I'm going to give you an opportunity to hear from Derek Kopp, who is a victim of marijuana prohibition here in Michigan, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his story with overzealous law enforcement. Thank you.
Good morning. Back in 2009, I was a victim of a gunshot wound to the chest, leaving me in critical care and hospitalized for a very long time and a lot of pain and suffering for the sale of marijuana out of my apartment. I was living in an apartment at Grand Valley State University with another gentleman, sharing a very small place, a very humble setting, and I just found myself in this situation where there was a dozen or so armed officers raiding my apartment at reasons I thought was unjust. I feel that they could have done it a lot differently, and instead of me feeling, in the end, justice, I've been living in fear and for the last 4 years. And it's really trying. People want me to keep talking about this story, which is very prominent, and I feel that there's something really simple about a plant that can grow, that the system is obviously not working. If I can feel this way, there's just a lot of things happening that kind of make this wrong in a way. And this particular situation has changed the direction of my life. It's changed the direction of the community that I was in. Students at Grand Valley, many of my friends were unable to feel the same way about school, feel the same way about me, feel the same way about marijuana in general, and it promotes fear to be in your own apartment, minding your own business, or in your own apartment, trying to do good for people, and living in the fear that this might happen to you at any time. So I really just think that it's tough to feel that way, and this particular situation, it took my rights right away from me. to the point where I was sent into an ambulance with a police officer watching me at every minute in case I needed to do anything. Into the hospital room I was in, there was a police officer standing there saying, and I said, hey, I need to call my parents. I need to tell them the situation, where they said they were waiting in the lobby and they weren't allowed to come in. I actually had to call them from my cell phone that was still in my pocket at 2 in the morning and tell them I'm in the hospital. I've been shot because I was using marijuana, and that was the first they heard of it. And they drove from Jackson 2 hours to come and just to see me. They had no idea what to think or what to believe. And I was forced to think, I'm either going to die or I'm going to go to prison. And I was only 20 years old at the time. And so far it's taken so much out of my life that it's hard to really get back in. And it was really hard to reestablish myself with society. It was a fear of people. I was skeptical to even talk to people. My own family, I couldn't even get on the same page with. And it was really a tough situation. And I think I'm really thankful that things like this are moving and changing and turning itself around so that people in the future don't have to live in the fear that I do and live in the fear that something could happen for something so irrelevant, something that does not progress mankind at all, in the sense that it's just a plant and it's something that we're overlooking and something we're spending too much money on, too much effort. On my case alone, there was surveillance for months and months just over that, and they only found an ounce of marijuana in my apartment, which is minuscule, very minuscule, and I'm trying. So thank you. Thanks for listening to my story. I've got a lot to say all the time, but I'm going to keep it short. So Tim Beck is going to talk, of Safer Michigan, Coalition for a Safer Michigan. So thank you.
Thank you for stepping up, Derek, and sharing that story. This is one of the reasons why we need this type of law. And I want to thank Representative Irwin, Calton, Shirkey. Every representative is a co-sponsor of this bill. You know, I am the head of the Coalition for a Safer Michigan. I'm the individual that secured the money for the ballot initiative, $1.5 million, in 2008 to get the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act passed. And in the last few years, I've been very active to a greater or lesser degree in passing decriminalization laws in 5 cities in the state of Michigan: Kalamazoo, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Flint, and Ypsilanti. And all of those cities passed these things with an overwhelming majority. And in Ann Arbor, well, Ann Arbor's had the same type of law for years and years, and Ann Arbor is a wonderful, wonderful community. And the sky has not fallen in any of those cities, and things have been working out very, very well with this legislation. A lot of people have been kept out of the criminal justice system. And in any event, I want to emphasize this is not anything radical that is being contemplated here. I'm going to read the list. There's the states Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Washington, North Carolina, and last but not least, Rhode Island just decriminalized small amounts. Their legislature just decriminalized small amounts of marijuana in that state. It just went into effect. It just went into law just the last couple of weeks. So again, this is nothing radical. We're only doing what a lot of other very sensible legislators and voters, some of them were ballot initiatives that have happened. So in any event, I really have not anything much else to say. People overwhelmingly support it, and the best poll that I know of is an election campaign where the votes are counted. That is the ultimate poll, folks. That's not speculation, okay? And people are overwhelmingly in support of this, and I just hope the legislature can step in, because I do not believe ultimately that ballot initiatives are the best way, to make public policy. It really should be done by the legislature. Again, I'm happy we have the ballot initiative process, but this really should not be up to the voters. It should be the legislature that's doing the job, and I want to deeply thank every one of you here for stepping up to the plate. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Representative Mike Shirkey from Jackson.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm glad that Jeff introduced this legislation. Jeff and I have a respectful relationship. We have robust debates, and we have a few issues that we don't necessarily agree on, but this one I think we do. This is the right time to have this debate in Michigan. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to co-sponsor it. I wanted to make sure that it had bipartisan support so that we could have a robust debate. To be clear, there's a couple of things in this particular legislation as it is written today that would cause me to probably not be able to vote for it, primarily because I believe we still need to differentiate between adult use and below adult age use. But Representative Irwin has indicated that he's willing to have a conversation about that, and that's all I can ask. I think that the data is clear, is that we're spending a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of resources in Michigan and across the nation to try to accomplish something that, frankly, we've failed at. And if government has a role, if government has a primary role, it is in protecting people's freedoms. Now, that doesn't mean that we have unfettered freedoms. It doesn't mean we don't have some very important regulation and legislation. Frankly, all of those, if they're in place, are to protect other people's freedoms. But the best government, by and large, is a smaller, less restraining government, less controlling government, less regulating government. That doesn't mean that all regulation is inappropriate, but I think this one has proven to be ineffective and something that, again, one of the reasons why I was a proud co-sponsor is it's time now to have this debate, and I think it will receive a welcome debate in the House of Representatives, and I'm hoping that we'll have widespread support across the state to encourage state representatives and senators to engage in this process, and so thank you.
And one final thing on that, one of the best lessons we learned from the 1930s is that alcohol prohibition enriched violent criminals, enriched the cartels and the gangs, and made them tremendously more powerful and caused chaos in the streets, really, frankly. And when the government finally developed a more sensible and sober policy towards alcohol, what we found was that the regulation did a much better job of making sure that alcohol was controlled and that it was kept out of the hands of children, and that trade in alcohol was happening in the appropriate time, manner, and place to meet community standards. And I think that is a lesson that we could learn with respect to how we deal with marijuana in the future. Now, we're getting a little bit further down the road than what my bill would accomplish. What my bill would do is it would just simply stop the senseless waste of money and the senseless waste of lives that is marijuana prohibition in Michigan. But having that next conversation about how do we really promote public safety, how do we get marijuana to not be a source of fuel for violent gangs, that's a conversation we need to have, and I'm eager to have it.